as I said, there's loads more of those animations available on my website. I want to very briefly tell you about the Bronx Healthy Aging Study. Now, the reason I want to tell you about this is because earlier on when I mentioned the risk factors, I mentioned that low levels of education increase risk for developing dementia in later life. And that was really rather concerning when that was discovered first, because you know, then there's a real sense of if you finish school early, you have an increased risk for developing dementia, and what can you do about that? But we also know that engaging in stimulating activities is also protective. So these researchers wanted to understand how those two factors interacted. So they followed 488 healthy older adults. They were over about 75 at the time of the study, and they followed them for 5 years. Over the course of that 5 years, 101 of the cohort went on to develop dementia. Now, what they were looking at in this study was to see whether engaging in these stimulating activities, and you can see from the list there that none of them are, I mean, they're what I would call hobbies, you know, things that we like to do, reading, writing, crossword puzzles, etc. And essentially, you know, they were looking at the dose response in a way. So they were looking at, you know, engaging in one of these activities for 1 day per week. They were interested to find out what impact that had on in the group who went on to develop dementia. And they found out that engaging in one activity for 1 day per week in the individuals who had developed Alzheimer's disease, that delayed the onset of memory loss for 2 months. So that's a great payoff. And the really, really exciting thing was that benefit, that positive effect, was independent of education level. So those individuals gained that benefit from what the stimulating activities that they were engaging in the here and now. And that was in individuals who already had dementia. So the take-home message there really is it is never too late to engage in stimulating activities. The second concept that I just wanted to introduce to you is neuroplasticity. And forgive me if lots of you are already familiar with that. Normally I can judge in the audience, but I can't see anyone's faces at the moment, but I'm taking it that people aren't familiar with it. So our brain is flexible, it's adaptable, it can change and reorganize itself by growing new connections between neurons. And it does this at 3 key points in our lives. At the beginning of life, when the immature brain organizes itself. So as humans, we're born and with quite an incomplete brain. There's an awful lot of work has to be done in early years. And that's why it's really, really important to stimulate the brains of babies, infants when we have them. It scares me when I see infants in restaurants looking at, looking at laptops, etc. That, the thing is, they need constant stimulation, because if their brain cells aren't engaged, they will be pruned out. Anyway, a lot of that happens during just after we're born, when the immature brain organizes itself. Second time it happens really is in response to brain injury, when the brain itself tries to compensate for lost function and maximize remaining function. And then the third time that it happens is in adulthood, when anything new is learned or memorized. So essentially, this term neuroplasticity just refers to the brain's capacity, the brain's ability to change with learning. So I'm going to show you a brief little animation that I made about things that you can do to keep your brain healthy. And then I'll move on and talk in more detail about things that you can do. Okay, I'll play this now.
What can you do to keep your brain healthy? We all know high cholesterol isn't good for our bodies, along with high blood pressure and being overweight. But what you might not know is that not only can these health concerns shorten the life of your body, they can affect your brain function. The more scientists study our brains, the more they're finding that how well it works is intricately tied to the health of our body. For example, just 30 minutes of aerobic exercise 5 times a week can keep your brain sharp. Because physical exercise not only helps your heart, it can increase the size of your hippocampus, a part of the brain crucial to making memories. But that's not all. Physical exercise generates a chemical called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which acts like fertilizer for the brain, encouraging the growth of neural connections and new brain cells. So, obviously staying active is important, but not just physically active. You need to keep socially active as well, especially as you get older. Because there's growing evidence to suggest that people who can avoid getting lonely reduce their risk of cognitive decline, something we all agree is a good thing. There's one last thing you need to do to keep your brain healthy. Keep it active. So, in no particular order, here are 3 top ways to keep your brain stimulated. Number 1, challenge yourself. The satisfaction you get from doing things slightly beyond your comfort zone actually changes your brain chemistry, making you feel more positive. Number 2, change yourself. Novelty helps your brain, so it's good to experience new things, take on new situations and meet new people. And number 3, learn something new. This encourages the growth of new brain cells and stimulates the connections between them, which has its own benefits, because stronger brain connections also help keep your brain healthy. So don't let age stop you from doing the things you love. Think young, because if you look after your brain now, keeping it active and engaged, it will make you proud for years to come.